All right, everyone. So, I'm going to use my hands. I taped one. So, pushes and pulls. I'm going to introduce you to some eventual physics content with stuff you're familiar with. You know, muscles can only pull. Skeletal muscles, not cardiac or smooth, but skeletal muscles pull on bones, and guess what? Those bones can push on things. So, for example, you have these different scenarios that are going to work through today, and you say, okay, what's the external force trying to do to the cervical vertebra? Well, the head feels a push from the hand. But why is the hand pushing on the head? Because muscles are pulling on certain bones that are thus pushing on something else. So again, at the end of the day, the muscles aren't pushing, the hand is pushing, but the muscles are pulling on the bone, which then pushes. Does that make sense? So this is 310 type of review where we looked at who do we need to call to do a job, because we understand why we need to call them for a set job. This is going to be aggravating. Sorry, I was trying to free up my hand, so I taped this piece to that piece. Let's try this. So, 310 review. What group of muscles? Now keep in mind, you see that arrow? That arrow is meant to show what his muscles at his neck are pulling in the direction of, right? That his hands are trying to bring his neck forward, so his muscles at his neck need to pull back. That's what that arrow means. So external force is trying to flex him. He needs cervical extensors, right? A group of muscles, it could be 2, it could be 200. Especially when you get into cervical and trunk, guys, you have some big daddy muscles, but you have hundreds of little muscles. So isn't it a lot easier, so that way you don't leave anyone out? You just say, hey, whoever's pulling in the direction of trying to pull my head back, I need to make a call to those muscles to do a job here, and that's to prevent me from going forward. So once again, cervical extensors that I need in that top left aren't necessarily making motion happen. Sometimes they work to prevent motion from happening. Just like if you're sitting up right now listening, your cervical extensors are on because you have the force of gravity trying to flex you. So those muscles are working above rest to do a job to keep you elevated so that you can see. Okay? So again, muscles and their function doesn't necessarily mean motion. You may have it or you may not. You may have motion one way by a certain group of muscles, you may motion the other way a certain group of muscles, depending on concept you're using here. But what never changes in anatomical position, we'll get out of anatomical down the road, but what doesn't change is the direction of their pull. That is always consistent. So, cervical extensors, top left. Cervical flexors, right? I need those muscles to do a job, top right. What about bottom left? How did we turn those muscles? I need to pull with muscles. My hand's trying to make me go right ear, right shoulder. That's right lateral cervical bending. So who do I need to pull with? Left lateral cervical benders. And then the other one, right? Trying to do this, who do I need to call? And this is what's really cool. Your body knows all this stuff. Your body knows all this stuff. John, put your hand out. Solid bar of steel. Don't let me put you down. Your body knows which muscles to turn on to do a job. Don't let me push your hand in. You know which ones, you know. Don't let me push your hands out. You know, you're... Sorry. It's my fault. So what's cool is that you actually have the life data to answer all these things. I just need to get you to know how to answer them. But your body knows all this stuff. Okay? So what biomechanics is going to start off with is we're going to say, who are those cervical flexors, cervical extensors, left lateral, right lateral, and we're going to understand why they are what they are. Why do they get put into that team. It's not like an NFL draft where you can just draft whoever you want. These muscles are in these groups because specifically how they cross in order to pull in those directions. Okay? All right. So let's first look at, now keep in mind, I know that the office did not order enough textbooks. That's Adapt, Improvise, Overcome. I'm going to put up the information on the board, so you feel free to snap a picture of it, to write it down until everybody has their materials, okay? But you shouldn't have to write it down. You should just be able to draw it. Okay, so check this out. Last class, I introduced you to the concept of spatial relationships. Being able to kind of visualize who is in your third grade class, not by memorizing a yearbook, by saying who sat in the front of class, who sat in the back of class, who sat on the right, who sat on the left. You kind of remember where people sat. And it's the same thing when I'm going to teach you how to remember all of these functions of muscles. Now keep in mind, when I teach you function, that's not me telling you that they are or are not working. That's 310 stuff. You have to figure out if I need to make a call to them or not. What this stuff will always and forever be is how they cross in order to know how they pull. What directions of motion they pull is direct reflection of how they cross. What is this how they cross? Well, when I was in college, it was told to me that if you know where a muscle starts and ends, origin, insertion, that function is given to you. And that's not a very good way to look at it. Not that origin insertion is not important, but the reality is that you can have a muscle that starts lateral and ends lateral, but yet pulls medial. Because it's all based on how does it cross the joint in order to pull at that joint. So for my athletic training majors, every muscle we talk about, I'm going to emphasize, hey, this is where it starts and this is where it ends. But in terms of function, let's look at how it crosses. Because crossing of the joints is what's going to dictate function. How it pulls. Okay? You have some muscles that start in the front and live their whole life in the front. But then all of a sudden, when they get to the end, they cross the knee in the back. And guess what? That makes them knee flexors, even though they spend a majority of their life in the front. So we can't just see a front muscle and assume that it's a front pull, is what I'm trying to get to. It's all about crossings. Okay? Now, keep in mind, again, we have several different majors with several different interests. After school, your interest. Some of you, massage therapy, athletic training, therapists, knowing where muscles start and where they end, very valuable. But again, from my perspective, what will every person in here have to know? What do muscles do? What do they do? How do they pull? Okay. And that is based on how they cross. Here's an easy example of how they cross. If I had a puppet and I want to make the puppet's arm go forward, I need to cross that string in the front of the arm. I need to cross it a certain way. I can still have it start in the same position and end in the same position, but if I cross in the back to do it, guess what? When I pull, it's going to go back here. So what we do is we look at a cross-section. This is a theoretical cross-section. In this case, we're going to look at a cross-section of the neck. And the cross-section of the neck is somewhat circular, right? Now, the way you see it on the board is if the person was laying down. Because remember, you're going to see it on paper. When you draw this circle on your desk, you're going to see it in a different dimension than you see it on the board. Does that make sense? So this is a transverse view. Or if you're looking at it as a transverse plane, that transverse spin, that would be like the merry-go-round spinning like this, right? It's a cross-section. In addition, the top part is the anterior part, and the bottom part is the posterior part. So again, if you look at it like this, wherever you're looking, you could literally imagine, man, you could literally imagine, there's the cross section. You can literally imagine like it slips in and you got the front part and the back part. The right side, the left side. Like it would literally be your neck and you see the front, the back, the right, the left. And thank you. So from that perspective, it kind of works because you can kind of literally visualize your neck in muscles that are pulling this way, muscles that are pulling that way, right side, left side. Okay? So let's break it down. Our neck is going to have 3 different ways that gliding joints can contribute to motion. In other words, slinky analogy, right? They can bend sagittally, frontally, and transversely. Right? So on our cross section, we represent the 3 different axes about which things can rotate with a polar, an anterior, posterior, and a bilateral. And again, you may say, well, wait, that's not anterior, posterior. It is when I rotate it for you to see. Okay? These are meant to be viewed like this. Does that make sense? Okay? So, how the neck works is students or muscles that sit on the right side of class or to the right of the AP axis are going to try to pull your right ear to your right shoulder. Or they're going to be right lateral cervical benders. Students that sit on the left side of class or cross the neck left laterally are trying to pull your left ear to your left shoulder. Those are going to be our left lateral cervical bender. Anterior crossing muscles, what do you think those are going to pull in the direction of? Trying to pull your chin to your chest. And what do we call that direction of motion? Flexion. So it's not that those muscles are always going to cause flexion, but they always pull in the direction of flexion. Or if you see this muscle is, its function is flexion, just add puller. Flexion, puller. Flexion, puller. Because remember, something that pulls this way can let you go back the other way, right? Flexion, puller. The more, it's not difficult. You guys are going to get this in a second. The hardest one is the transverse plane. Because as we know, if you have a merry-go-round and kids are on merry-go-round, you can be anywhere on that merry-go-round and spin it in either direction, right? So it's not necessarily front, back, left, right. That doesn't matter. It's how is it trying to spin the merry-go-round? So muscles that are trying to spin the merry-go-round this way, or as you perceive clockwise, if I'm laying down, those are going to be right transverse cervical rotators. And muscles that are trying to spin the merry-go-round this way are going to be left transverse cervical rotator. So far, so good? Okay. All right. I am, don't let me forget this, guys. I'm going to post all of these muscles on Moodle. However, guys, there's this really cool website. I'm telling you, it's going to be even better than this because they're going to be color versions of these. It's called www.google.com. It's super awesome. You can type in any muscle and they're going to show you like thousands of different views of it. It's great. So these are old school, man. These are black and white. You know what? These used to be transparencies. Y'all even know what that is? Like they used to have like this thing and you put the transparency. Okay. So my point is that there's better versions of this out there on the internet. Okay. All right. So let's first start with the muscles themselves, and then we're going to make sense of where they sit in class. I'm going to show you how our circles can be used to understand function. Real simple, real easy. Okay? Keep in mind, this is not every muscle you have in the body. These are just the major players. Okay? The major players. So the first two muscles I'm going to teach you are the sternocleidomastoids, and we're going to get into semantics. We're going to get into sometimes a lot of these big main muscles are actually just bony articulations, origins, insertions. So you have sternocleido-clavicular, so you have an origin on the clavicle, you have an origin on the sternum, and that muscle runs inferior to superior, goes up, and it blends into a common tendon, and it inserts on your mastoid process. That's that little bony prominence right behind your ear, okay? That's why actually I use the ear a lot, because where it inserts is right by your ear, okay? So it goes here to there, runs just like this, okay? Now, in reference to my spine, I know my spine is in the back, right? So these muscles, the sternocleidomastoids, notice I have one on the left ear and I have one on the right ear. So when you say sternocleidomastoids, that's plural. That means the left one and the right one, because they are separately innervated. They don't, well, if you want to recruit both of them, you got to make two calls. You got to call the right one and you got to call the left one. They're not automatically working together. In fact, they're antagonistic in certain other dimensions. So they can work together, but they don't have to work together. In fact, I'm going to teach you that they only work together in one dimension. They work opposite in two other dimensions. That's really cool. So, this is how we speak of these. Right sternocleidomastoid, singular. Left sternocleidomastoid, or sternocleidomastoids, inferring right and left. Or you could say right and left, that's fine as well. But the point is that just like you have a right bicep and a left bicep, you have a right sternocleidomastoid and a left. Two separately innervated muscles, right? Now, this view, I'm going to pull up some different views. This view is really hard to see. In other words, you know how sometimes different views, to see certain dimensions, you kind of have to have a side view, a front view, a top view, right? This view is great to see frontal plane pull. It's harder to see sagittal. I'm going to give you a different view to see sagittal. But while it's up here, let's look at frontal plane view. If muscles can only pull, and if, let's say my mom is still feisty. She's 73 years old, she's feisty, and she's short. And so imagine my mom coming at me, and because I did something stupid, I did something wrong, and she took my right ear and she pulled it down, right? So muscles can only pull. So if my mom pulls on my right ear down, she would be pulling in a direction of right lateral cervical bending. So the right sternocleidomastoid pulls the same way. It's a right lateral cervical bender. Not because it's always going to cause that motion, but because it's always going to pull in that direction in the cervical vertebra's frontal plane in anatomical position. So the first function of the right sternocleidomastoid is a right lateral cervical bender. So guess what the left one is going to do? It's going to pull in the direction of the left lateral. So again, they're antagonistic in the frontal plane. They pull in opposite directions in the frontal plane, because one's on the right side of the AP axis and the other's on the left side of the AP axis. Remember frontal plane, AP axis? Think of it as your Adam's apple. The one on the right, one on the left. Okay? Let me find a different view of these sternocleidomastoids. Thank goodness for spell check. Here we go. So here's a good example. Let's see. All right. So again, what we're looking at is the anterior pull, the forward pull, meaning that a lot of our muscles have multiple directions of influence. So the frontal pull, right? Right lateral, left lateral. That's the up-down component of that muscle. But if you notice, it also has an X component, a forward component pull, because it starts in the front and it pulls something in the back. It's like opening a drawer, right? When you pull forward, you're trying to slide the drawer forward. So that muscle is literally trying to bring your mastoid processes towards your sternum and your clavicle. Does that make sense? So it has a forward draw to the back of your skull. In other words, it's pulling in the direction of flexion. Now, what's really cool is that a lot of times these muscles that are agonists, meaning pulling in the same direction, cancel out other functions. Meaning that if only the right, I'm not going to do transverse yet, but if only the right sternocleidomastoid pulled, it would want to do something like this. And if only the left pulled, it would want to do something like this. But when they both pull, they cancel out frontal and they can work together to draw. Think of it like this. Another example, if I had someone else on the other side of the table and we both pushed, the table would translate forward. But if only one of us pushed, it would do this. So we have to cancel out. I'm trying to push the table forward, but also rotate the table like this. The person on the other side is also trying to push the table, but it's trying to translate like this. So these cancel out and we can work together to go forward. Okay? So, right and left sternocleidomastoids are cervical flexors. And that's actually the only thing both of them do together. When they're partners, that's the only thing they can do as partners. It's pretty cool. They do more in opposition than they do synergistically together. All right, now the fun one, the transverse plane. I think this is a pretty good view. Let me see. Oh, this is a great view. Okay, so let's go back to my mom. I got in a lot of trouble when I was a kid, little mischievous. So let's pretend my mom came at me from the front and she grabbed my right ear and pulled it forward. If she pulled my right ear forward, wouldn't it make me want to look to the left? Does that make sense? So you look at that sternocleidomastoid and you say, if I pull that right ear forward, if I draw the right side forward, it would make me want to look to the left. The right sternocleidomastoid is a left transverse cervical rotator because it pulls in the direction of looking to the left. Right ear forward, left transverse. Left ear forward, right transverse. So again, the cool thing is that because the right and the left have different poles of transverse, yet again, they can cancel each other out when they work together. Not only are they canceling each other out frontally, but they're also canceling each other out transversely when they pull sagittally. Make sense? Any questions? So again, knowing where they start and where they finish, I'm not saying it's not important. I'm not going to test you on origins and insertions. I'm going to reference them. I'm going to talk about them. But the take-home point, the so what, is what does it do? What does it do? Origin and insertion won't tell you when to not do certain exercises to work certain muscles. You have to know the function. You have to know what directions of motion those muscles pull in. So this class is about function. And then, based on what you guys go into, you may have to know origin insertion. As origin insertion is very important for athletic trainers when they're palpating certain things and testing for etiology. You guys are aren't going to be necessarily doing that right now. But we have to know what they do. We have to know what directions that they pull, and that's all based off of how they cross. So check this out. Let's do some so what. I taught you two muscles. Let's put them in the class circle and see what it would look like. Okay? Don't pay any attention to these. Let's just do the ones we talked about. So the left sternocleidomastoid sits in the antero-left lateral part of class. It sits in the front and to the left. Meaning that it crosses the bilateral axis anteriorly. Meaning that it pulls in the direction of flexion. The left sternocleidomastoid sits on the left side of class. Here's the middle of the class, sits on the left. Meaning that it pulls in the direction of left lateral cervical bend. Anterolateral, forward and to the side. What's the function of the right sternocleidomastoid? Sagittally, it's a cervical flexor, meaning that it pulls in the direction of cervical flexion. Or, if you see right sternocleidomastoid's function is flexion, just add puller. Flexion, puller. Because remember, even when you're doing extension, it's still pulling in the direction of flexion if it's working eccentrically, right? So what's the function of the right sternocleidomastoid? I don't have to memorize lists. You could if you want to. But all I have to do is say, where does that muscle sit at your neck? Front, lateral, it pulls this way, it pulls that way. It's a cervical flexor, it's a right lateral cervical rotator. Well, what about the transverse plane, okay? Where's my rotation arrow? How is it trying to spin the merry-go-round? Oh, it's trying to spin the merry-go-round like this. It's a left transverse cervical rotator. So again, how is this information useful? It could be very useful if you're trying to, let's say there's an injury to the right sternocleidomastoid. Let's say there's some atrophy to the right sternocleidomastoid. And you need to specifically innervate that side while not innervating the other side so let it catch up. You need to know not only what this does, but you need to know what that does so that you don't work this one. I'm just giving an example. So if you say, well, the right sternocleidomastoid is a cervical flexor, right lateral cervical bender, and a left transverse cervical rotator, well, I need to create some exercises that produce external forces that are trying to influence the joint in the opposite direction so that that muscle can be innervated sagittally, frontally, transversely, or any combination of those. In addition, this also tells us, well, if muscles can only pull, and I know the directions of pull, then inversely, I know the directions of stretch. Meaning that if the sternocleidomastoids together pull in the direction of flexion, I know that as I extend, I lengthen what pulls in the direction of flexion. So how would I stretch the sternocleidomastoids? Well, if they're pulled forward, I need to extend the cervical vertebra. But what about in the frontal plane? Well, I can stretch the right lateral by bending to the left. And I'm going to stretch the left lateral by bending to the right. And then the tricky one. This is the one that tricks people because it's not what we're anticipating. The transverse, that's what gets tricky. How would I stretch the right sternocleidomastoid? By looking to the right. That's a little freaky, huh? How would I stretch the left? By looking to the left. Here's an example of how that works. Okay, watch this. This shortens. You see the slack? This lengthens. So the right sternocleidomastoid shortens when I look to the left, and it lengthens when I look to the right. And it's because of the way it crosses. It's because of the cross. Not the cross, but it's the cross. It's how it crosses. My left sternocleidomastoid actually gets shorter as I look to the right. You can see it. And it gets longer as I look to the left. It's pretty cool, huh? Okay? So, some classes have small numbers. Other classes have big numbers. Shoulders, hips, those are big classes, like 5A classes. Some classes are small classes. And keep in mind, this isn't all the muscles. These are just the major players, and to introduce you to these concepts, okay? So, again, how can cross-sectional anatomy be useful for muscle function? If you learn the cervical class, where the muscles sit, and a question comes up, what's the function or functions of a specific muscle? All you gotta do is just see where it sits and just think of how it pulls. The left sternocleidomastoid, cervical flexor, left lateral cervical bender, right transverse cervical rotator. Bang, bang, bang. In addition, you don't have to be redundant with lists. What I mean by that is if you learn all these functions with separate lists, sometimes muscles will be with different muscles. So it's easy to confuse flexors with left lateral, with right transverse, because you're being redundant with several muscles. And it's like, okay, what's the function of the left sternocleidomastoid in the frontal plane? Okay, one second. Let me check all my lists. Okay. So it's more efficient to learn cross-sectional anatomy to muscle function as well. Now, let me tell you this. I will never, ever, ever ask you to do this for a grade. This is a teaching tool that can be used to help you learn all the functions of all these muscles. But I am never going to say, draw the cervical vertebra function for a grade. I'm asking you function questions. In the frontal and sagittal plane, what's the function of this muscle? What's the function of the left sternocleidomastoid in the frontal and sagittal plane? Frontal, left lateral, cervical bender. Sagittal, cervical flexor. I might say, what's the function of the right sternocleidomastoid in the frontal and transverse plane? Frontal, right lateral. Transverse, left transverse. Right, left. Two different things in two different dimensions. Okay? So this is just a teaching tool that works for a lot of students. But I don't care how you learn it. I need you to get right answers. How would I stretch this in this different plane? How would I stretch the left sternocleidomastoid in its frontal plane? Well, it wants to pull this way. So if I actually move that way, it's going to be put on slack. Right? Watch. How would I stretch it? I need to move the opposite direction to the left. So stretching the left sternocleidomastoid in the frontal plane, I actually need to have right lateral cervical bending, the lengthen of which pulls left. If it pulls left, I got to move it right. If it pulls forward, I got to move it back. All right, let's do the LES and RES. Oh, all right. So, this is a little blah. I understand. This is a little blah. Oh, this is another thing that's cool. I'm going to give more examples of this when we get to the trunk. But notice what happens when the right sternocleidomastoid actually rotates or moves in the direction of its pull. It loses obliquity, it loses angulation. It becomes more and more vertical but less and less angular. That's cool. And then what happens to the other one is as you do this, guess what? The other one becomes more and more angular and less vertical, which is needed when you need to slow down motion the other way. That's kind of cool. So sometimes during these exhibits, like where they do like body works and body worlds where they have these poses, sometimes there's these allusions to muscles because you're used to seeing them in anatomical position, right? You're used to wanting to see angled muscles here. But if they're twisted, that angled muscle may now become a straight muscle. We'll get to more of that. This is what I wanted to really emphasize, this top right. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, you got a ton of these. And it makes sense why you've got a lot. Stability, insurance, you know, we have so many things that run through these canals, but also fatigue resistance. You know, if you're erecting your spine for a majority of the day, you better have a lot of things that can help it. What I mean by that is if you activated your deltoids for a while, you get tired of all that's one muscle. So it makes sense that you kind of have to have a lot of different muscles to help. And with our spine, it's not just one bone articulated, there's a lot of different things. You got a lot of things there. Longalis, iliocostalis, longissimus, iliocostalis, spinalis. You have all these little intrinsic muscles in there, extrinsic muscles, some go from here to there, you got a bunch. And one day, some of you may know all of them. That's super cool. Today is not that day. Okay? So this is what we do, guys. We punt. We basically say there's a group within a group. In other words, the main group is cervical extensors. But we have a group within a group of muscles that we're going to call the Erector Spinae group. And you have some on the right side, and you have some on the left side. What's really cool is that any Game of Thrones fans out there, until last season, they had the wall. It was this big wall that separated north and south. We kind of have a wall. It's called our spine as processes. What I mean by that is this wall, in terms of muscle function, nothing crosses over. The stuff that's on the right side is innervated separately than what's on the left side. So we have a right group within a group that we call the right erector spinae, that erects our spine so that we can work all day and not get fatigued. And the left. And guys, it's not just about function. There's also some stability. I mean, man, those muscles have to constantly draw down to make sure that these, you know, pieces of these vertebrae don't get hypermobile and come out of place. And there's a lot of responsibility. So it makes sense we want to have a lot of people there to secure it. You know, Fort Knox has a lot of security because there's a lot to protect. Your spine has a lot of security because it has a lot to protect. Also in 310, I emphasize that muscles don't only help us move, they help us stabilize. And muscles are big-time stabilizers. The research, when I was at Auburn, it was just coming out. Now it's pretty well known that, you know, one of the reasons women have more knee tears is because of their muscles' role in stability. In other words, typically women are more flexible than guys, right? We're stiff as boards a lot of times, and that extra stiffness helps protect our joints. So my point is that all of these different muscles, you say, well, why do we have a lot in the back and not in the front? Because we don't need the ones in the front. The ones in the front aren't keeping us erect, because we have more stuff in front that's trying to flex us. So we need a lot of muscles in the back to prevent this from happening. Okay? So for semantics, we're going to have a left group of erectors and a right group of erectors. And what I wanted to show you here is specifically how those erectors work for rotation. I gave you the example. If my mom pulls my right ear forward, I'm trying to look to the left. But if my mom pulls my right ear back, I'm trying to look to the right. So look at this erector set. They start more medial, it goes out lateral, and so it's trying to pull my left ear back. It's trying to make me look to the left. So the left erector is going to be a left transverse cervical puller. And the right erector is going to be a right transverse cervical puller. I think the extension pull is pretty obvious, right? It's trying to pull me in a direction of extension. And if I told you that these muscles don't crisscross, you know, the spine is a wall, the right and the left, would it make sense that the ones on the right side of the spine is trying to pull me right lateral, and the left is trying to pull me left lateral? So now let's look at our whole class and try to make some common sense of this. If someone says that the sternocleidomastoids are antagonists to the Erector Spinae, that's only in one plane. It's only sagittal. What's cool is that your sternocleidomastoids can be agonists with your Erector Spinae in the frontal plane or in the transverse plane, depending on what you need. And it makes sense, because my left sternocleidomastoid is not only pulling me forward, but it's pulling me lateral. So if I need my left lateral cervical benders, let's say I'm hanging off the table, or I'm leaning over like this and gravity's trying to do this, so I need to pull with this, it makes sense that I need something in the front and something in the back to pull to the left, so that they can cancel out sagittally and cancel out transversely. Work together synergistically by canceling out in other ways. Now, let's look at the transverse cancellation. This is the, that's it, tricky one. But if I had a basketball and I was really trying to optimize its spin, right? Spin it on my finger. Or if you had a merry-go-round and kids wanted you to spin and there were two people to push it, you probably wouldn't both get on the same side. You'd be on one side and the other person would be on the other side. You would be pushing the merry-go-round this way, they'd be pushing the merry-go-round that way, but together you'd be rotating it the same. That's what we call a force couple in physics or biomechanics. Two different linear forces that are actually working together to rotate something the same. So if you had a basketball and you tried to spin it as fast as you can, think about your hand placement. One on the left side, one on the right side. One in the back, one in the front. Same direction of rotation. So that's what happens with your sternocleidomastoid. So let's say I cloned my mom, and there were two of them, and one of them's about to pull my left ear forward, and the other's about to pull my right ear back. Right? A force couple, sternocleidomastoid on the left side, working with my erector spinae on the right side. Canceling out sagittally. One's pulling me forward, the other's pulling me back. That cancels. One's trying to pull me here, the other's trying to pull me there. That cancels. And they work together to spin. So in the transverse plane, your left sterno and your right erector are actually synergists. They're agonists. They work together in the transverse plane. They pull in the same direction, is what I'm trying to say. And the right sternocleido and the left erector pull in the same direction in the transverse plane. Opposites in the sagittal, opposites in the frontal, but the same in the transverse. It's pretty cool. So a question that we had in 310, I know you guys, well, okay, I know you guys, maybe you guys remember this. You look to the left as fast as you can. And then you stop. What sped you up? What slowed you down? Remember that in 310? And we said, okay, nothing's trying to make me look to the left. So I have to use muscles that pull that way to speed up my left transverse. But the same muscles that speed me up can't push me to a stop, right? So left transverse cervical rotators are going to speed me up, but right transverse cervical rotators are going to slow me down. This is where you can say who those muscles are. These circles don't tell you if they're working. They don't tell you how they're working. These circles help identify who is in the group that you know is working. Left transverse cervical rotators sped me up. Who are they? Wait, let me visualize my cervical circle. Who's pulling in the direction of the left? Right sternocleidomastoid, left erector spinae. That's how you do this. Who slowed me down? The right transverse. Who's the right transverse? Okay, who pulls in the direction of right transverse? Left sternocleidomastoid, right erector spinae. This helps you identify the specific members of the team that you know is working. This doesn't tell you if they're working or not. This just tells you who pulls in certain directions. Who are the players? Who are the muscles? Okay? On the test, if I said, list 2 functions, function means direction of pull. Function means directions of pull. Function does not mean it's working. Function does not mean it's being innervated. Function just means direction of pull. If I asked you to name 2 functions of the left erector spinae, specifically in the frontal plane and transverse plane, all you got to do, well, you could memorize a bunch of lists and go through your list. That's fine. I just want right answers. Or you could say, where does the left erector spinae sit? Frontally, it pulls in the direction of left lateral. Transversely, it pulls in the direction of left transverse. Now, why would I only ask you 2? Because naturally on multiple choice questions, when I ask 2 things, I can flip-flop answers. If I asked you for 3, I don't have enough answer choices to get every possible outcome. So I typically just pick 2 of the 3. I'm not disrespecting the 3rd, I'm just respecting the 2 that I'm asking you so that I can have a choice for 5 answer choices. I could ask for sagittal and frontal. I could ask for frontal and transverse. I could ask you one-on-one. If you know it, then it doesn't matter which 2 I ask you. You'll be able to figure it out. Okay? Let's go to stretching. How would I lengthen the right erector spinae? How would I stretch it? What position would I need to put the cervical vertebra in the sagittal plane to lengthen the right erector spinae? Would I have to flex? Yeah. Like it's so simple. What about in the frontal? Right erector spinae. Frontal. Wouldn't I have to bend to the left? Now here's the tough one. The transverse. Right erector spinae is pulling me this way. So to lengthen it, I need to look the other way. One circle, 4 students in class with infinite information. I mean, this really does answer so much stuff. So remember, before I let you go, these circles didn't tell you who's working. 310 taught you who's working, right? That circle didn't tell you that I need cervical extensors top left. Those circles didn't tell you I need cervical flexors top right. Those circles didn't tell you I need left lateral cervical benders bottom left and right lateral cervical benders bottom right. But you know what the circles do help you with? What are the muscles that I need at the top left? What are the muscles I need at the top right, bottom left, bottom right? In other words, once you identify the group that you need to call, the circles help you to identify who are the muscles in that group. Nothing more, nothing less. Any questions? I got you.